there's some pretty significant news in the world of professional wrestling, and that is that CM Punk finally got fired from AEW. And I gotta tell you, this was a long time coming, man. Now CM Punk is weird because he has a lot of people that will defend him no matter what, and I don't really get it. Um, I mean, and it's like weird, kind of paranoid defense, and I guess it's because people identify with him. Kevin Nash tried to compare, CM Punk defenders to Trump supporters. And I don't think that that analogy is actually good because, you know, I would say that the political establishment, the intelligence apparatus, the media, those things were never in favor of Donald Trump. It's like, yeah, they used them to get ratings. They talk about him for ratings, but it was always very negative to the point now where, Trump's constantly getting indicted. CM Punk, the playing field that he was on, the head of the company, Tony Khan, was constantly bending over backward for this guy. It's like, I get it. The Young Bucks didn't like him. He had some, issues with Hangman Page and Colt Cabana and Kenny Omega kind of got dragged into that. But with the guy who the Bucks stopped with, Tony Khan, he gave CM Punk every chance in the world. And hey, John, how you doing, brother? And this whole situation reminds me of a teacher, and then there's like a bratty student in class, and then the teacher like wants to keep the student in the class, like wants to keep the student in the classroom because he thinks that it's just it's just better not to have people getting kicked out of your class, right? So you figure it's like, oh, well, I'll try to give this kid an education, I'll try to make things work, I like the kid. Hey, Spider-Man, how you doing? And, the kid just keeps trying over and over again he's a punk. I mean, like, he's trying over and over again to get kicked out of class. And the teacher's in a situation like, how many warnings do I give this kid before I kick him out of class? And CM Punk maybe he just thought that he could do whatever he wanted and not get fired. Maybe some kids like to get sent to the office and they'll just do anything until they get sent to the office. Maybe CM Punk wanted to get fired, but, Tony Khan gave that dude every chance and more. And eventually this was just like, all right, that's going to be enough, Phil, get the hell out of here. Because this is the Spider-Man. I don't know if I said hi, but how you doing? This is pretty much a year to the day that AEW had a really good pay-per-view, and the issues afterward. Hey, I'm beat up from the New York State Fair. Well, it's a long day on your feet. I didn't go to the fair this year, but hopefully you had a good time. But this is like pretty much a year to the day of AEW having a really good pay-per-view. And then that pay-per-view being overshadowed by, CM Punk getting into a real fight backstage. And, people have definitely said that, fights happen in sports and pro wrestling, and, it's a male space and it's a space, where honor and aggression can exist. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but you got to understand, it's like every place has a culture, you know what I'm saying? So like, if the culture of that place is, not a place where it's like, yeah, we beat each other up if something rubs us the wrong way, like that didn't seem to be the culture in AEW. And, CM Punk walked in there, and apparently that was his, mentality. I'm going to beat respect into people. And I think there was a good degree of insecurity with CM Punk because he, looked so bad in his UFC fights that maybe he really felt like he needed to assert himself. Or maybe he was like a kid with a new toy. He had some MMA, jiu-jitsu training, and now all of a sudden he thought he was a tough guy. And that's actually the kind of mentality that you don't want to have. In fact, that is the mentality that a lot of people who come into MMA gyms have and then fail because they have that mentality. And for someone who's been training as long as CM Punk, I don't know how he could have that mentality. Like, I'm going to go around and try to beat people up to show off what I know. Maybe that's not his perspective. Maybe he's like literally that's his management style. But then again, he is not in a management position. I mean, I've dealt with people that it's like, well, I'm going to appoint myself leader of this situation. It's like, you're not the boss of anything. Like, we work for a boss, and he didn't say that you're in this position, so, and people who do that, I think that tends to show a lot of insecurity. The other thing with CM Punk is that, his behavior, it seems to be very erratic, and it's very possible that his concussions I think it's called CTE. I don't know what the exact acronym stands for, but it's definitely an issue with, concussion brain trauma, and that leading to behavior that is not mentally balanced. Because I've heard stories that people who have concussions, personalities can radically change as a result of the trauma to their brain. And, CM Punk is certainly someone who, he had a concussion in WWE. Hey, Nintendo 70, how's it going? Got a concussion in WWE. I believe he sued WWE. And I remember the story that CM Punk always heard, I always told, that I'd always heard, is that when he quit WWE, Vince McMahon was like, well, Phil, this has got to be the concussion talking. And it's like, okay. Then after that, CM Punk decided to try his hand at the UFC, where he lost badly twice, and that includes shots to the head, right? And then he goes and wrestles in AEW, where he's, not doing ballet. So it's very possible that, his mental health and his, kind of brain physiology are compounding each other negatively. So that could very much be a thing. And, a lot of, the people commenting on this who are of like the Jim Cornette camp are like, well, why isn't Jack Perry being fired? It's like, well, Jack Perry, has not had a history of fighting people in the locker room and going into business for himself on camera before he made that crack about using real glass. And it's really funny. One of my favorite things to, as a historian, everyone's got a perspective. I always teach my kids about primary sources and how each source can view something from a different angle, and each source will present something kind of in a self-flattering way. And it's really funny. There's an episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Will and Carlton got in trouble, and Uncle Phil, kind of overreacted, and each person was telling their own point of view where they were like the saint in the situation. International Channel, how the hell are you doing, man? I'm talking about all the CM Punk firing drama. There was also a really good episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns ran over Bart, and they had like the different points of view, and Bart, according to Mr. Burns, was this like asshole on his skateboard, and when he ran him over with his car, Mr. Burns is like, no, I'm old, take me. So the CM Punk version of the story that Nick Hausman said was clearly self-flattering to CM Punk. The Jack Perry version, was sure, and more Jack Perry is kind of like, oh, I was just kind of being a normal guy, but then like the other versions of the story seem to align much more with the Jack Perry story. And it is what it is. Treehouse of Horror Simpsons are the best in the series. Yeah, those are often very good. It would take me a while to think what my favorite one of those would be. But there's some awesome Treehouse of Horrors. The one that's coming to mind right now is Homer in 3D, when Chief Wickham's like, Homer's like, did anyone see the movie Tron? No. And Chief Wickham's like, yes. I mean, no. So, but yeah, so like CM Punk's version of this story, CM Punk just sold over 80,000+, but the majority of the wrestling media wants to focus on the backstage drama. Yeah, and it's CM Punk's fault, dude. I mean, like, it's like he is a soap opera, and it's fascinating. Like he's a walking soap opera. He's someone who is, I guess you could call him, and I don't mean this negatively, but I'm just being blunt. You could call him an attention whore. He's someone who just wants to be the center of attention. He's someone who thinks very highly of himself. I think he's someone who doesn't have any religious beliefs, to my understanding, and so that leads him to have a lot of narcissistic tendencies. Not that people who are necessarily secular are narcissists, but they certainly can be, because if you have nothing else, if you don't believe in anything else other than yourself, then it's real easy to view yourself as the center of the universe, and then once you see yourself as the center of the universe, you become an unhinged asshole. Hey Diego, how you doing, brother? Welcome to the stream. So like the CM Punk version of the story is like, well, I was backstage and just minding my own business, and then Jack Perry decided to run up and push me, and then me, as a trained mixed martial artist, I decided to restrain him in a choke until help came, and it's like, yeah. And then I was listening to some wrestling commentator, it's like, CM Punk fed that story to Nick Hausman, because there's very few people that would consider CM Punk a trained martial artist, but CM Punk is a trained martial artist. Not necessarily a great practitioner, but he's someone who, to my understanding, who is, a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and from a gym run by Duke Rufus, who is a good MMA trainer. So yeah, blue belt is not something that is like the easiest thing. I mean, it's an intermediate level of jiu-jitsu, and it's one that I'm at right now. I'm nearing the end of my blue belt, so hopefully next graduation I go to purple. But yeah, no, I mean, if he's someone who trains, then that's good. But it's like, the thing is like, someone who trains that much, apparently he trains, still, like, you need to have composure. Like, if you're doing jujitsu and you overreact to everything that's going to bait you into a reaction, you're going to get submitted. So the whole point of jujitsu is, they teach cops jujitsu, is that it's supposed to give you analytical skills and physical and mental composure, so that you know how to react in situations where most people would panic. But it seems to be the exact opposite with CM Punk. It's like his mixed martial arts skills has decided to have him try to challenge anyone to a fight now. He's like, they all go down to me, the Home Depot delivery guy, the mailman. Don't F with me, because we can take this outside, so. Well, anyway, the Jack Perry side of the story was like, well, I was just walking back from my match, and CM Punk got all up in my face with a bunch of people. So, you got a problem with me? And he was like, nah, I was trying to get some heel heat. And then CM Punk, attempted a guillotine and started throwing awkward punches at me, which based on his UFC fights, attempted guillotines and awkward punches seem about right. And then, the fight got broken up. But then, like, the third party source, who, according to Dave Meltzer, who is friends with the Young Bucks and doesn't seem to like CM Punk that much, Meltzer is definitely known for biased reporting, but Meltzer's version of this story, I mean, all the versions of the story are aligning more with Jack Perry's. And according to Meltzer, the source that he's using here is someone who he said is more of a friend of CM Punk's. And it was actually kind of worse than Jack Perry's account. Like, the non-wrestler's account was actually worse than Jack Perry's account, where it was like, the CM Punk sucker punched Jack Perry and then lunged at Tony Khan. And then it's like, Tony Khan was there, and they did like an investigation, and they opened up Collision, and they're like, yeah, he's fired. I'm sorry, but he's fired. So, and you can just also look like, you can't constantly have a guy starting, like, your two of your all-time biggest shows, you have a dude physically assaulting people, where, it's way detracting attention away from the pay-per-view, as, International Channel just said. I mean, you can find stories where wrestlers fight each other. Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart being the biggest one, where Shawn Michaels got that chunk of hair ripped out. That's why he had that weird hairline for so long. But Sean and Brett worked together, and that fight did not detract from, the pay-per-view. You had the whole situation that was, super unprofessional of Kevin Nash and Eric Bischoff and Scott Hall. When Bischoff fired six, and Nash basically, you know, threatened to beat the shit out of Eric, and Scott Hall basically locked the two of them in a room together. But when it came time to do, stuff, they were able to put their differences aside. This is a situation where it's like you're at the show and you have your top talent running around trying to beat people up all the time. Like that's crazy. Like what the hell are you doing? So yeah, I think he's got brain damage from his concussions. I think the name Punk is something that is ascribed to his personality, because in professional wrestling, the way that you get a good character is you magnify a real part of yourself to be kind of a superhero caricature, a supervillain caricature. And they're kind of method actors that take a part of who they are, they being professional wrestlers, and turn that into a larger than life comic book persona. And there is apparently a part of CM Punk that is a delusional, self-centered, aggressive person. And now he's a kid with a toy with MMA training, and he's just running around challenging people to fights who piss him off. And that's the exact kind of person you don't want with martial arts, knowing martial arts. I did a review of a movie, Yasuaki Kurata's Blood Fight. And the movie, they actually advertised this movie on Nitro, by the way. Check my channel for the review. You see the Nitro advertisement. And in the movie, there's this, Japanese teacher. See, this is an unofficial sequel to Bloodsport. Japanese teacher. His name is Masahiko Kai. And he takes this guy. I think his name is Stuart Smith. He was in all these Godfrey Ho Ninja movies. He speaks very loud, awkward English, and he takes this street punk in and tries to train him, and all he wants to do is he's like, "Whoa! If I learned this, I could beat the shit out of anybody." He's like, "Don't get it wrong," and then he sees a kid who's much more level-headed and decides to teach him instead of Stuart Smith, who's just trying to beat little girls up in the street, which he does in the movie. It's actually pretty funny. You can also see clips of Blood Fight on the Noel show, where I use the Blood Fight Pokemon ball. So it's kind of like the Conan lever when he pulls it to show Walker, Texas Ranger. Anywho, so yeah, what's next for CM Punk? Well, hopefully, he doesn't harm himself, because I do think that could be kind of scary. And he definitely has a lot to offer. He does. I mean, even though he's kind of showing himself to be a clown right now, he is a talented performer, and he's someone with a lot of drive and ambition. And and he's got a beautiful wife, and he's got all the potential in the world, even though he's 45. He's still got, a lot of time. He's got his whole life ahead of him still. And he can do, I think, whatever he sets his mind to. He certainly, got himself to the top of the pro wrestling world. But there's a fine line between believing in yourself and being, ambitious, and being a self-centered, delusional person that, tears everything down around you and then creates a vortex that drags yourself down as well. You got to be, it seems like CM Punk has kind of crossed that line. Now, someone who's just like that, Jim Cornette, does nothing but make excuses for CM Punk, and it's ridiculous. But Jim Cornette, I think, is consciously playing a character. I mean, he is a carny bullshit artist who, like CM Punk, has anger issues. And also, like CM Punk, those anger issues keep costing him his job, So I do think there's probably a good degree of identifying, with CM Punk on Jim Cornette's side. And I know people will say, CM Punk's old school, but he's really not, because when he was younger, there's lots of stories about him pulling this kind of shit, like, him going to Rob Van Dam, that like he's the locker room leader of the new ECW. It's like, you just got here. Who the hell are you? Hey Nick, how the hell are you? And the thing is too, is that this ends up costing other wrestlers. Like Ricky Starks on tonight's Collision was, really angry because he was going to be wrestling CM Punk for that real world title. And now he's not. Luckily, and then now Bryan Danielson is having to force himself back with his broken arm or whatever the hell he's got, because apparently they don't have Edge yet, or Edge's contract is still under the no compete, umbrella. And so they needed someone besides CM Punk because they've got this pay-per-view, and he did this right before the pay-per-view in Chicago, and it's just nuts, man. And the kind of excuses Jim Cornette is making, like if you the amount of logical gymnastics that this, effeminate malcontent, who wants to act like a tough guy, and I'm referring to Jim Cornette. This dude talks all the shit in the world until someone like Santino Marella gets up in his face, and then he's backpedaling, and and then all of a sudden when security comes around and starts restraining Santino Marella, all of a sudden Cornette's a badass. He's like, oh yeah, come at me, yeah, like the kind of stories that he's telling, is like, well, Jack Perry, he was, he's a punk, and CM Punk, who calls himself a punk, he's a real man, and he couldn't get a subway ticket, and so now he's mad, and he's okay for being mad, and it's just like, shut the fuck up. Like, it's like, you listen to this guy because he's good at telling stories, but he's the most insufferable, mean-spirited, unhinged person. But he's very entertaining to listen to because he can weave a yarn like few others can, and he can weave insults like some old lady weaving a quilt. But it's like, this isn't helpful. Your analysis isn't helpful. It's like this guy is blinded by his hatred of Tony Khan and the Young Bucks for some reason. But I think I know what I was gonna say. CM Punk, when he was in ECW, or no, he was in Ohio Valley Wrestling, going up to ECW. He was chewing out Tony Atlas because Tony Atlas is like, "Hey kid, stop using that tape," and CM Punk decided to like try to tell him off or something like that. And it's like, dude, just this is not the way. Like, listen, man, I'm as a teacher, okay? I use the analogy of a kid trying to get kicked out of class, or a kid being an asshole and the teacher not knowing whether or not to kick him out of class. And that was the dynamic between CM Punk and Tony Khan. And, part of it, the thing that a mature person should do, like, let's even say Jack Perry was an asshole, okay? And let's even say that you got 81,000 people outside. Your match is next, and Jack Perry. Let's even assume CM Punk's story is true, that this kid bumps you in the shoulder. By all accounts, CM Punk's response to that is, "Do we have a problem here?" It's like that right away is going to escalate the situation. Okay. If you want to be a locker room leader, like you fancy yourself to be, your job is de-escalation, okay? When someone's acting immature, your job is not to meet that level of immaturity and sink beneath it. Your job is to create a higher standard, and then when that person starts thrashing around like a dumbass, they're going to destroy themselves, and you are not going to be destroyed, and you can be a beacon of stability for the people that you're claiming to lead. But instead, and this comes from probably someone without a good worldview on their shoulders, they decide just to sink to the lowest common denominator. And and also apparently monitors were falling on Tony Khan or something like that. Now, I for one would love to have it raining CRTs, so I would just grab them all for the game room. Anyway, I think International Channel's got a comment here. If I was Tony Khan, I would sue CM Punk if he attempts to sell secrets to other wrestling promoters. I think one of the reasons that CM Punk might have gotten fired was because he probably violated terms of that thing from last year where he got into the fight with the Young Bucks. There was in all likely because no one can apparently there's gag orders about that whole thing. And he probably, I don't know, I don't have any information about this, but lots of the talking heads on wrestling tabloids are speculating this, and I think they're probably right. Um, that CM Punk, agreed, like, hey man, I'll come back and I won't get into any more fights, So what does he do? He goes and gets himself into a fight. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think his best bet, if he really is serious about professional wrestling, I think Impact Wrestling is probably his best spot to go. Maybe he can go back to WWE and live a happy life, but that's a lot of high pressure, and I I don't know, dude. I don't think it's in the cards. He seems to have burned that bridge pretty good. I mean, the only way they'd bring CM Punk back is if AEW started threatening them and they needed something big. And maybe CM Punk would be desperate enough to try to, turn over a new leaf despite, AEW, and maybe, Triple H could beat up CM Punk. So like he wouldn't be dealing with a boss who's, sadly a fan of CM. Like by all accounts, Tony Khan is a wrestling smark, and I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean that Tony Khan is a fan who's, got some, a lot of money and a lot of passion and a lot of analytical skills and a lot of connections, and he's someone who, apparently, he's a nice guy, and when push comes to shove, I think he can pull the trigger, and he's done that. He's competent. Some people say that he let it get too far with CM Punk, but I really think he was giving CM Punk every possible chance because I think he really wanted this relationship to work. And I'm sure there was money involved in terms of, I'm sure TNT was like, hey, we got a big WWE name. We, can say, hey, we got CM Punk on our shows, keep him around, selling T-shirts, that kind of thing. But this is ridiculous. Just hit the pine, man.